Welcome everyone to the Open Wallet Foundation Wallet Interoperability SIG meeting for November 3rd, 2025. Um, as with all Linux Foundation meetings, this is held under the Linux Foundation antitrust policy. If you have any questions about these matters, please contact your company counsel, or if you're a member of the Linux Foundation, feel free to contact Andrew Updegrove of the firm Gesmer Updegrove LLP, which provides legal counsel to the Linux Foundation. In addition, this is held under the Linux Foundation Code of Conduct, which can best be summed up as be excellent to each other, and we're going to get a ton of work done. Our speakers today are Martin Westerkamp and Ronald Koenig, and they're going to be talking about the EUDI business wallet. And we're pretty excited for this discussion. We thank them for joining us. This meeting is being recorded. It will be shared on the Open Wallet Foundation YouTube later this evening. Later this evening CET, not everybody else this afternoon. Is there anybody new to the call who would like to introduce themselves before we get started? All righty. We have I wouldn't say a light agenda. I want to get into the agenda really quickly so we can get to our speakers and get to the great questions that are come out of this. But first of all, we would like to give a huge shout out and thanks to Shar Howland. Shar has been a co-chair of the Wallet Interoperability SIG from the beginning when this community moved over from Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust to the Open Wallet Foundation. She is a fantastic contributor and maintainer, one of our favorite people. Shar has accepted a role with another company and has moved on. And we cannot, and it's out of the identity space. So she will be missed. She is really an awesome person, and we're looking forward to seeing what she does next because it's going to be great. Upcoming Wallet Interop SIG meetings on 11/10. We have an update on the Hyro did identity integrations with open wallet projects. The Hyro team, which is a Linux Foundation decentralized trust project that comes out of the Hedera community. They have created a plugin for Occupy and a package for Credo that will allow those wallets to work on Hyro implementations. So we are very excited to see this, and both Alexander and Keith, Alexander from DSR, who's part of our community, and Keith, who's also part of our community, who's from the Hyro Hedera side of the house, are going to be here next Monday to present on this, and it should be a great discussion. On 11/17, the team from MIT is going to talk about the DCC Learner Credential Wallet. This is a great team. Anybody who's been to IW has seen Dimitri present. He's fantastic, but also his colleagues, Alex and a few others are going to be there, so we're looking forward to it. And on 11/24, we build an organizational wallets will be our topic for discussion. Last Wednesday, we had the Open Wallet Foundation Technical Advisory Council. It was a meeting. It was a great discussion. A link is here to the recording. We had two main parts of the agenda. There were no votes. There were no new projects to be discussed, but Romek talked about scale adoption readiness by product and service makers, which we think is really important. It goes into all the work that's going in the architecture SIG about how do we move from projects to products. The Open Wallet Foundation does not have projects. We have fantastic software projects and the communities that build them. But for those who take those projects and implement them, we want to reduce we want to reduce the complexity. We want to find ways to make that process easier for them, to encourage adoption, encourage use, get folks more involved in our community, and more importantly, at least, I'm biased, hopefully get some of those folks using our tools and projects to come back and contribute back. Really great discussion. The second part of the TAC call, we talked about adopters.md. I will once again raise my hand and say I am biased. I am so happy to see adopters.md as a concept being brought to the Open Wallet Foundation. Thanks to Stephen Karan for bringing this up. But really, from a staff perspective, having an adopters.md file in every one of our repos, and we're going to start with slow. We want projects to be excited about this and want to get involved, but it gives us a way for any given project to raise their hand and say, hey, we have people implementing our code here. And it's either self-reported or it's someone lets us know that, hey, so-and-so is using Occupy or Credo or Bifold or EUDI. We don't care about the project, but we do care that those projects are able to get credit for being implemented and being used and being, some of the biggest companies in the world and governments are already using our code. And so it's a way for us not just to promote ourselves, but also we want to give these communities credit for all this hard work that goes into these projects. The architecture SIG, every Monday directly after this call, 6 p.m. CET. You'll notice I didn't get to finish that on the wiki. I'll finish that in a second. But we are discussing within the architecture SIG, and the main work product coming out of the architecture SIG is this mapping effort. How do we map the components in a given project? How do we compare different projects to each other based on those components? Where are the common components that we're all using? Maybe in different frameworks or maybe different versions, but how do we normalize some of this stuff? And this all goes to that idea of reducing how steep the learning curve is for taking a open source software project at the Open Wallet Foundation and implementing it in the real world. Project updates. I'm going to turn it over in 1 second to any of the project leaders who are on the call. But the Occupy maintainers call is happening tomorrow, as well as the Bifold user group call meets tomorrow. And I have to check, I believe Credo is later this week. But is there anyone from Occupy or Credo or Bifold who wants to give us a heads up on any new things that have happened?
Yeah, on Occupy, we're just getting down to the final pieces of the 1.4 release. This is the release that adds canon storage, which is allowing Occupy to manage what previously was controller storage, client storage. So where you wanted to get good performance on doing things like storing credentials or storing connections, those can be done now in Occupy itself and get good performance for rendering effective UIs for the wallets. So or for the server-based wallets. So yeah, 1.4 will be out very, very soon. We're hope to have that all resolved with Canon and be able to get that released. And we're excited about that.
Awesome. And if you get a chance, please join one of the Occupy calls. Dave McKay, who's been doing this incredible work with Canon and contributing to the Occupy community. He's been on those calls talking about that work. I'll see if I can find the recording from last week because it was pretty great. But thank you, Stephen. Is there anyone from any of the other projects who'd like to give a quick update on Credo or Bifold or OWL or another project like EUDI or another one? All right. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bo. Bo, if you'd like to introduce our two speakers today, and this way we can spend as much time with them as possible.
Well, I think that all I need to say here is that Spirit is doing a fantastic work when it comes and very wide view of what's going on in Europe. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the approach from the business wallet point of view, especially as I'm trying to support the we build semantics work that has started now, so that we can get that also going. And the question is really maybe Centers will also say something about the payload in credentials exchange between organizations with business wallets as compared to the very simple driver's license or whatever you have in the personal wallets focus. But over to them and let's listen.
Fantastic. And the Wallet Interoperability SIG would like to welcome Ronald Koenig and Martin Westerkamp to the call. By all means, if you'd like to share your screen, go right ahead. We're going to turn it over to you both.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. So let me just share my screen.
We can see your screen fine. Of course, Zoom wants to request things. There we go. EUDI Business Wallet. Your screen looks great.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Martin Westerkamp. I'm the product manager at Verity for our EU Business Wallet, and I'm happy to share our experience, our views on this topic that we have gained in the recent years and months. So yeah, I think in the beginning it may be a bit dry with some regulation, but I'll try to make it more interesting with some demo as well of our wallet to see what it looks like. And later we can then also have a look at the actual credentials that we are exchanging and that we are discussing right now also in the WeBuild consortium. So allow me to say a few words about Sverity first. So Sverity is a company that is focusing on decentralized identity solutions. So we have 3 different products currently. One is in the US for the use of pharma market in the supply chain to enable participants in the pharma supply chain to authenticate and authorize access rules, to check if packaging was done correctly and all that. Then we have a solution for digital product passports, mainly in Europe. And finally, of course, the EU Business Wallet. We're participating in multiple research projects. And most importantly, we participated here in the EWC and right now in the WeBuild project. And WeBuild is a research project that is dedicated to piloting the EU Business Wallet with almost 200 participants. So that's very exciting what's going on there. So what is the EU Business Wallet? So you all have heard probably of the EUDI wallet and the EIDAS regulation. Now the new term EU Business Wallet came up, and this is because the EU Commission recognized that what was defined before with the EIDAS regulation and the EUDI wallet that was then invented in the aftermath, an important pillar was missing, and this is the businesses. And this was also a result from the EWC where we participated. We gave this feedback to the Commission, and the Commission has decided to come up with an own legislation for the EU Business Wallet. And it really has a strategic role here. So the objective is to combat fraud, to increase automation, and to increase interoperability between businesses of the EU member states. So we expect this legislation to be published actually in this month, in November, by the end of the month, and hopefully then we know more of the details. But I think we already know the objectives of this legislation. What's also important is that this will allow us to identify a company, and a company can then act on itself, but we can also use like company certificates that allow us to prove who can represent a company. So we have legal representatives of a company that have representative rights, and these rights can be delegated then later on. And this is mentioned here in this EU company law, where we have the company certificates that are issued by registers of the member states. And as soon as we have received such a certificate in the wallet, we can use it to prove to business partners who can represent the business. So what's the difference between the business wallet and the citizen wallet? Of course, you have all seen this citizen wallet part where we have many mobile devices, where every single transaction requires consent of the user. In contrast, we have the business wallet now that is mainly server-based. It is available 24/7, and it provides some sort of automation, right? So in the usage, we have in the citizen wallet, the citizens, of course, and every transaction is initiated by the user as well. In contrast with the business wallet, we now have different kinds of identities in one wallet. And I think this is one very important aspect that many people don't think about in the first place, is that we have the identity of the business itself, but we also have the identity of the members of the organizations. And these members could be humans, but it could also be machines, right? It could be agents that have representative rights that can act on behalf of the company. And these rights also have to be managed somehow. So we believe that the business wallet should not only include the business identity, so of the legal person, but also allow members of the organization to use the wallet to prove their identity and to prove certain that they have certain attestations. Then here, of course, we have flows where the user initiates the presentation of certain attestations, but we also have flows where we have automated exchange of attestation, and thereby it's of course important that we have an availability of 24/7, so we can reach this automation. When it comes to our protocols, now it became evident that OID for VCI and OID for VP will be used for the citizen wallet, in addition to MDL for exchanging credentials, and SDJ VC will probably be used here as a format. On the other hand, we have here OID for VCI and VP as well, probably in order to have interoperability. But we believe that it's also important to achieve high degree of automation by relying, for example, on protocols like Wiki with DIDCOM here. And this is what we implement today. So we support Wiki and DIDCOM for most of our processes, and now also for compatibility reasons, implement OID for VCI and VP. But we really believe to give the best to get the most of it, let's say, we should rely on more advanced protocols that allow higher degree of automation. And this is also something we want to encourage here in this round, that such a protocol like Wiki should not be deprecated, but we want to also keep working on this, enhancing this, and bringing this to life again. Then we have domain-specific protocols like the digital decentralized claims protocol, for example, that is very important in the data space environment. And we have, of course, as format, the W3C VCDM. And this is also important for us to have VCDM2 here with SDJ, because not with SDJ, sorry, with JSON LD, to ensure that we have rich semantic models that we can utilize, because we have quite complex credentials here with the business wallet, in contrast to the very limited credentials that are stored in citizen wallets. So some example use cases, what it's being used for, of course, KYC, know your business, know your supplier. And here we have the same processes again and again, right? We have identification of a business, of legal representatives, and power of attorney. So the person who's representing that enterprise does not necessarily have to be a legal representative registered in a register, but can also have delegated rights via power of attorney credential here. We can use this then to update master data in an automated fashion, for example. So you would be notified as soon as a credential expires, and you can act accordingly to request it again. And what we require here for financial services is, for example, ownership structure, ultimate beneficial owners, and so on. In data spaces, we have automated onboarding. So we onboard with our identity that we have received from the register. This is legally binding, and we can use this then to onboard and to exchange this kind of for a membership credential that then can be used in order to prove to third parties that we are a member of a data space and are trustworthy to share data with. Then with digital product passports, we can use our identities here, first of all, as a trust anchor when issuing digital product passports. So a verifier can check who really issued this DPP. We can use it in order to exchange the data along the supply chain, store it in a decentralized fashion, and also to protect certain attributes and have access management via our identities. And lastly, of course, we have payment, where we can then link the authorization that we have received from the register with the authorization of a payment. And we can have, let's say, a chain of credentials that allows us to prove our authorization to authorize then certain payments. Of course, what's also very important today is the trusted AI topic. No presentation without trusted AI. And here obviously we run into a problem where we communicate with agents, agents communicate with agents, but we do not know what the agent is allowed to do, right? So we don't know who is behind an agent potentially, and we don't know the operational boundaries. So can an HR agent, for example, initiate payment? Should it be possible? Does it have these authorizations or not? And this is something where we can use our wallet as well in order to enable trust here in these processes. So the solution here is that we use verifiable credentials. So every single agent receives its own identity, receives its own credentials and attestations that prove certain authorizations. And these can then be exchanged between the agents in order to check if the identity is trusted and if the agent is acting within its authorized realm. If we look at the trust chain we have here, we see that at the core of it, we have the business register. And this is authorized by the member state to issue the identity credentials to the business. This is the EU business wallet, and it stores the LPID. This is the legal person identification data that allows us to authenticate ourselves to third parties. We can use this to receive KYC credentials that tell us more about the company, like, for example, the European Company Certificate that allows us to investigate who's responsible for acting on behalf of the company. And these rights can then be delegated in a power of attorney credential. This comes then together with certain licenses and roles that we can attach to the agent. And we can receive certain certificates from conformance assessment bodies that attest to this agent, that the agent complies with what was defined here. And then when interacting using the A2A protocol, we can present these attestations as part of the identification and authorization, authentication and authorization, and thereby achieve trusted agent-to-agent communication. But for today, we have prepared a use case where we want to use the business wallet to open a bank account. And here we have in the center, of course, the company with its business wallet, and the business wallet is set up in our use case from scratch. So we will see an empty business wallet that is used for requesting verifiable credentials from an issuer. For our case, in our case, this is Bundesanzeiger Verlag. This is the German register, business register that we are partnering with. And this register then issues certain attestations to our business wallet. So this will be the attestation about the representative and an attestation about the company itself. These attestations will then be used to open a bank account with a demo verifier. And I will just show this demo here in between to make it a bit more interesting. Otherwise, we'll be only demo for too long. So let me share what it looks like to set up such a business wallet and what a business wallet actually looks like. So this is our Certi's business wallet as we envision it. So first we would give our wallet a name. The wallet is empty, as I mentioned before. We will create a business wallet for Evonik Industries here. It's a German chemistry company. And we request the EUDI here in the first step. The EUDI is a unique identifier for this enterprise, and we receive this from the register. And we can use this ID later to identify ourselves. But so far, of course, all information is self-attested, so cannot be trusted. Here in this case, I have logged in before as Thomas Hermann, so I'm impersonating him because he really is a legal representative of Evonik Industries. And we now need to understand there are different identities here in this wallet. So we have the cloud wallet, we have the identity of Thomas Hermann as a person acting in the business realm, so not as a private person, but in the business context. And we have the identity of the business itself. And both can receive attestations to prove certain attributes about them. So what we do first is we want, as a person, to request a verifiable credential that allows us to prove to third parties that we are who we claim to be. And for this purpose, we request this credential here from Bundesanzeiger Verlag, which is the register, the business register. And now we switch our view to the page of the register. And this is what Bundesanzeiger Verlag as an issuer would see here. So we see that this request has been received for Evonik Industries with this EUDI, but this so far is a self-claim, right? Because we just inserted this in the wallet, anyone could send this to us. And where the trust comes from is now that in practice, there would be an authentic identity proving here. So we have an EID, we have the EUDI wallet, we have video ident, any certified process can be used here for identifying that person. And here, because we don't have it attached here in this process, we just need to unlock my password manager. We just assume that this person is standing in front of us and showing his ID card. In practice, of course, this would be a remote identity proving with EID or EUDI wallet. So we know who is requesting this credential as a result, and we now check in the background if this person is really a legal representative of Evonik Industries. And only in this case, we issue this credential and create this link between this person and the organization. This attestation is issued now to the business wallet, and we can then use this afterwards to prove our identity as a person acting in the context of Evonik. So we have received this credential here, and we can now request credentials for organization. So when switching to our organization profile, we can request different kinds of credentials. Right now, these are all issued by the business register. Of course, in the future will be multiple issuers. Right now, this is all credentials issued from Bundesanzeiger Verlag. So we have LEI, legal entity identifier, as a global identifier. We have the LPID, legal person identification data, which is only the name and the EUID of this organization and can be used for authenticating this enterprise. It's meant to be long-lived and therefore only has these two attributes. We have the EU company certificate that I mentioned before, and we have what we call an organization credential that includes all of the aforementioned, but in addition, it also has ultimate beneficial owners. It has the ownership structure of this enterprise, everything that is needed in the financial sector as well. And therefore, I'll just request this large credential here. And what we also see is that we have to present our natural person credential here in this process in order to prove to the issuer of this credential here who is requesting that credential. So we present our credential as Thomas Hermann to the issuer, and the issuer can then check if it's a legal representative and issue the organization credential accordingly. So we request this credential, switch our view again back to the issuer of Bundesanzeiger Verlag, and we see that we have received this request by Thomas Hermann, and this is for Evonik Industries, and can decide to issue this. Of course, in practice, this would be an automated process. We just show this here, so it's more comprehensible what happens where. So when switching back to our wallet, we see we have now received two different credentials for two different identities as well. So we have Evonik Industries as its own identity, and we have Thomas Hermann. And we can now use both credentials combined in one process to open a bank account. And this means we don't have to handle multiple wallets at the same time This was also investigated in the EWC research project. This was also tested out to have multiple wallets in these processes, where some attestations are presented from the mobile wallet of the citizen, and some credentials would be presented out of the business wallet. But it turned out that this becomes very complex technically, but also from the user perspective, of course, because it's not really intuitive why multiple wallets need to be used here. So we can now use these credentials to, for example, open a bank account. We have implemented this exemplarily here for a bank in Germany, where we now agree with the terms and policies, and request is sent to the bank, and the bank lets us know what kind of credentials are required for opening a bank account. So in this case, this is this organization credential that we have just received, and also 64 natural person credentials. And these 64 natural person credentials include the one of Thomas Hermann, but also of 63 other legal representatives. They haven't onboarded before, but still we have received these credentials for the other legal representatives, because the verifier needs to know who is a legal representative, even if the application wasn't sent by them. So because only Thomas Hermann has onboarded here, only Thomas Hermann can send this. So we submit our application, and now we switch our view to the verifier. And we see in the list of requests that we have received this request, and we now check if the credential has been signed by a trusted issuer, if we trust that issuer, if the credential has been revoked in the meantime, and if the applicant is really a legal representative or not. If this is all fine, we can check all the data that we have received, and we see that it's really rich here. So we have the EUDI, we have the address, we have register information, LEI, VAT ID, we have the information about the industry it's working in, where it's being traded, all the legal representatives, that's the 64 I mentioned before, business year information, ultimate beneficial owners and all that. And this is also what makes it more complex. So we need really in the background some semantic model that backs this and that ensures interoperability in Europe of different issuers, and of course verifiers here. So if we are happy as an analyst of the bank, we accept this, can also check this, and over time you can now monitor the revocation status of the credential we have received and act accordingly. So if a legal representative, for example, leaves the company and this is reflected in the business register, then the business register would revoke the credential and the bank could request a new presentation from the customer accordingly. And what's also important to see here is where this connection comes from between the user, Thomas Hermann, who just requested this bank account, and the bank. So when we look here at the credential, not the bank, the organization of this organization, then we see that we have the list of legal representatives in here, and we use the DID here of that person. And the person then can use this credential also to sign or to present its role in the company. And we thereby have multiple owners of this credential. So we have the legal representatives as a holder, but we also have the enterprise itself as a holder that has its own DID. And both can present this credential in order to prove their direct identity or their role within the company. And we see this also in the following. When looking at the credentials, going back to our slides, these are the credentials we just saw. So the legal person identification data, EU company certificate, the member credential of the person. And what we didn't see right now is the power of attorney. So I, as a legal representative, could also have delegated the rights to an employee. And what's important here is that the LPID, so the legal person identification data, is really different from the natural person identification data. So there are a lot of rules set up in the eIDAS regulation for protecting personal information, and that is the PID. But for legal persons, that's very different, right? So this is the entire credential you see here for the legal person, for authenticating the legal person. It only has the EUID and the company name, nothing else. And therefore, we believe there's also no selective disclosure required. The rules that apply to the natural person identification data should not apply here. And we see how such a credential looks like, right? For opening a bank account, it's quite complex. It has a lot of information and a lot of links with external data as well. And therefore, we believe we need a rich semantic model that relies on vocabularies that are already out there. We also, of course, need to extend these, but there's already a lot of context around that we need to reuse. And we need to rely on international standards, industry-specific standards, link those, and we just need JSON LD here to make this interoperable. So this is what you just saw in this example. We have the enterprise credential, we have the natural person credential, and we can combine these in one presentation to the verifier. And hereby we can also prove the role of this functionary here within the company, and we don't need to handle multiple wallets in one workflow. We also can have power of attorney, and here it's important to understand that the verifier wants, of course, to have a trust chain it can verify, right? So the power of attorney credential is issued by a legal representative of the company. So now when a bank receives such a presentation from an employee of a company, it would check first who signed this verified representation. This is employee B. And now it has to check where the authorization comes from. And this is in this power of attorney credential. So we see the power of attorney credential is issued to employee B and signed by functionary A, who is a legal representative. And now we need to check why can we check functionary A here? And this is because in the enterprise credential, we had the list of legal representatives, and this is functionary A. And we can check if it was signed by functionary A here, and this enterprise credential itself was signed again by Bundesanzeiger Verlag. So we have a full chain between the employee B here and the issuer, which is Bundesanzeiger Verlag, and that is trusted. And this means we want to ensure that the identification here of the signer is really based on cryptography, because what happens today a lot in the EUDI space is just matching based on attributes, and we believe this is not a good idea. We should really use DIDs here for doing this. So we need all of this to come together to bring this entire project to a success. And with this, I open the floor to questions.
Well. That was one wonderful presentation, I must say. I'm very proud that I have been able to bring you here to this transatlantic sharing of progress, and you have done a fantastic work, I must say. Just before others step up with questions, I know that there are some anxiety about what the EU Commission is going to come out on the 19th. Promised about the business wallet. Will they be able to get rid of the original this is only for consumers thing and actually move into the business needs, where the credentials for sure, as you already said, need more data and more payload in order to lead to proper automation. In Germany, you had this study that middle-size and large enterprises will will save 84.7 billion euros net every year, basically mostly on procurement processes and some customer processes. There's much more to do in HR and so forth. So the automation aspect, we should, and I'm sure you are going to take part in the semantics group in WeBuild where this should be done. But my question is that could we do more before the 19th to be sure that the EU understands what really is needed for business-to-business transactions, all the way to international trade and UN CFAC projects and relay and all that we are also working with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So yes, I think we can always do more, of course. So I think what we need is a flexible trust architecture as well. So right now, everything is built around the trust lists, the EU trust list, right? But this won't help us for defining who can issue certain kinds of credentials. Of course, for some governmental credentials, that is the case, but for many business-related credentials, certificates, and so on, this won't be the case. And I think, for example, the EBSI here would be a good option to enable more flexibility here. And I think, yeah, relying on DIDs, on such architectures will also allow us to have more flexibility and in the end, yeah, bring this to a success. Of course, you're right. The semantics is paramount here. Of course, we also participate in the WeBuild semantics group and here closely work together with our European partners in order to ensure that there will be interoperability between the member states as well.
Great question, both. Thank you. Stephen Curran, you're up.
Sure. Fascinating presentation, really good. I got a few, but anyway, I'll start with this one. The delegation are you doing that on a per verifier basis, or is it a generalized delegation that sort of chains things together so that it can be used anywhere? So delegate once within the company and then use anywhere, or is it
exactly?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to do it to the bank.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I was a bit quick here, maybe because this only shows the verified presentation here, right? But this is the last step, of course. So first, first what we need is the enterprise credential issued by the register that includes all the legal representatives, and this also includes the DID of the legal representative, by the way. And using this DID, the legal representative, who's called functionary A here, can issue this power of attorney credential. And this power of attorney credential is issued to the employee. Both are using, in this case, the same business wallet, but this is not necessary. This is not a requirement. Could be external as well. And this is signed then with, yeah, as mentioned, the DID, and we can then check here in the enterprise credential the representative rights of this functionary. And because employee B has received this power of attorney credential, employee B could also then reuse this for multiple presentations, of course.
Stephen, for this, we are using the concept of chain credentials. So that means we have introduced this provenance proof as it was defined already, and then chaining credentials and providing this concept of chaining credentials so that we can have that everybody who has his own identity can really delegate rights to another identity.
Okay, so that's the thing I was really wondering. Employee B can then delegate to employee C?
Yes.
And there's a chain to connect these together?
Yes.
Wow. Cool.
And we are doing it by adding additional vocabulary, and this vocabulary contains the idea of the provenance proof, so that I can really prove that I have the rights if I delegating some rights to someone else. and this provenance proof is included in this power of attorney credential.
Okay.
I think the biggest challenge here is really the semantics behind it, because today, if power of attorney is issued, it's really paper written, and it's up to the interpretation of the verifier to which extent power of attorney is present. And now we have to find a machine readable common ground between all member states, which is of course a huge task.
Yes, totally understand that angle of it. But even the chaining capability is pretty impressive. So nice, really cool. I'd like to dig in more.
Stephen Coran, you said you had a couple questions. I'm gonna let David Alexander ask one, then we can go back to you.
Sounds good.
David, you're up.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Really appreciate it. A couple of practical questions. Continual compliance. Does the wallet get automatically updated if somebody disappears off the register? And a related point is, what do you anticipate the integration costs to an organization's own back-end systems, such as their directory and HR management systems, so onboarding and offboarding of people can be done automatically in the organization?
I'm not quite sure if I got your first point correctly. So you mean when a company is not part of the register anymore, what happens to the wallet,
or a person is not?
Okay. So if a person leaves the company that was mentioned in the register before, so a legal representative, then this credential, this enterprise credential, will be revoked. So in this case, a new credential has to be acquired as well, because the representative rights also cease, right? So every time this happens, any change in the register happens, it will just be revoked.
Right, not revoked and reissued without the person that's been removed.
Exactly, yeah.
The idea behind this one is that the issuer is responsible to revoke a credential as soon as the authentic data, which are behind this credential or where the source of this credential is changed. For example, a CEO is leaving the company, then the business register will be updated and the issuer has to revoke the credential which needs to be updated.
Right. And then what is the downstream implications of that for established trust chains where they're reliant on the enterprise credential? Is there a notification that a new one's been issued, or do they get an automatic update, for example, the bank?
No, the idea is that the verifier, the bank, whenever it receives the credential from a customer, it is doing the verification process. And one step in the verification process is checking the revocation status of this credential. So if you check the revocation status of this credential, you go to the issuer in a privacy-aware manner, checking the status of the credential. Is the credential revoked? The verifier needs to request a new credential from the customer, so that means from the holder, to go through the process of verification as identity.
Right.
Maybe to add to this, if you're wondering like what happens to this delegation chain here, if functionary A, for example, leaves the company, can B still prove his delegated rights? Because we got the feedback that this is intended by companies, so they don't want this delegation chain to destroy this representative rights of employee B here, even if functionary A leaves the company. So in this case, we can add a proof of non-revocation here to the power of attorney credential, allowing a verifier to check if at the point of issuance of this power of attorney credential, this representative was still a legal representative. And thereby we can also ensure that even after he leaves the company, the full verifiability of this trust chain is maintained.
Yes, and I'm sorry, this is probably more detailed than it needs to be, but if employee B was delegated authority by functionary A, and functionary A leaves, but employee B is still authenticated with delegated authority, are they linked to a new functionary person, or are they an orphan who happens to carry on with those access rights, or are they linked to another responsible functionary?
So we got the feedback so far that it is intended to just leave it, so it would be orphaned, but still could be used by employee B. Of course, both can be implemented, but we received the feedback that this is really what is intended today.
Okay. It feels like a threat vector, is all I'm saying.
I don't know, like because you could, of course, if there's any, if in the past, for example, let's say functionary A is removed from is fired because he was acting maliciously, all these power of attorney credentials can be revoked themselves. So if he, on the other hand, if he leaves the company because he found another job that is better paid, then these delegated rights could be maintained.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question, David. Stephen Karan and then Romek.
Okay, just two more or less comments. One, I sympathize with the need for the getting the collaboration and agreement on the semantic meanings. I noticed you had a severity context in your JSON LD, so you're that's still to be worked out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's challenging, I know, and I think it's great that you would go ahead and define that. The other thing that I wanted to point out to you, and you may or may not be aware of it, but Sean mentioned Dave McKay and some work he's been doing. Notably, the thing he's been working on is he and his team is DIDCOM-based workflow that allows a server to define workflows that make it easier to implement complex flows. It might be worth looking at there because these are largely web-based. Maybe it's not such a big issue, but I would think in the context of a business wallet, having the ability to define flows and execute those flows would be really useful. And what Dave's proposed in the DIDCOM working group is a pretty powerful capability for that. So just something I would point out you might want to take a look at.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, thanks for the hint. We'll take a look for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. And Romek, you're up.
Yeah, just a quick one. So your employee B in this diagram would have to be a board member on the company, because everything else, there are the only legal people for the business. So you have your legal representatives are the board. This is in the UK. I can't say everywhere else for Europe. I'm a British person. I do audits for UK companies, and yes, we have companies growing fast, and basically we're dealing with the fact of companies have to deal with the change of board members. Then you can actually change this to be the employee representative or representatives, and that can then go to the power of attorney as required, and then that clears things up. Do not involve general employees because it just makes life very difficult, because typically they churn like crazy. And so it's like deal only with the board of the company, and that means that they are legal representatives of the company anyway, so therefore the power of attorney comes in with this. And that's what I'll be seeing. As I say, I'm not a legal expert on this, but that would be a simplification of the employee list section. Otherwise, you're including every single person in the business, as it were.
You mean for redelegating or
everything? Anyone who represents the business should go through the board of the company. Basically, you go through. So when you do credit card transactions on behalf of the business, a board member does it in the UK. So they actually have a list of credit cards which the company has in it. Usually the finance officer looks after it, the chief finance officer runs this for the business. They could provide the delegation themselves, but the law says the actual the chief finance officer is legally representing the company in the UK. And I suspect this is similar in the European Union. I can't say for EU because I work in UK companies, but this would make things a simpler thing for the actual who represents the business on a legal footing.
It's slightly different in the Nordic countries anyway.
Yes, but it just gives a clarity for us for saying, look, we have it. Anyway, I will.
No, what we are doing, we distinguishing between someone who has what we are calling signature rights because he is registered in the business register
That's
to
correct.
legally represent a company. This is one case.
Yeah.
And then it is already expressed in the KYC credential because the KYC credential and the EUCC credential contains a list of all legal representatives of this company. But at least in Germany, we have also the case that, for example, the CEO of the company is delegating the right, for example, to the head of the financial department, who is not listed in the business register, but has, for example, the right to sign contracts up to 25,000 euro without
Correct.
to need a signature from a board member.
Yes, but it's a difference between large scale and small scale here. There's a certain set of people in most companies who are the legal representatives of the company anyway. Anyway, I thank you for the talk.
Yeah.
We've got 2 minutes left. Does anybody have another question for our fantastic presenters, Ronald and Martin? Stephen Coran, did you have a third question? Also, folks, if you get a chance, please check the chat. Stephen shared some links from the comment he made earlier about the workflows proposed to the DIDCOM protocol and the ACAPUG meeting where DIDCOM protocols were presented. Both those links are there. Bo's got a hand raised. Go.
Yeah, I must say this is really so thorough work, and I hope that that we can get the slides. And my question, just to be on the sure side, I have certainly copied those pictures here. Is it okay to share these on behalf of Sperity all over the place or not?
Yes, it's already available today. So what you're seeing here is already available on oid.sperity.com with some explanation around it. So feel free to share it.
Great.
Thank you very much. And
I will find those slides, Bo. I'll turn them into a PDF and make sure they're on the wiki page as well. Stephen Coran, last question. Everyone's going.
Okay, everyone's going. Don't have to answer this, but I wish I'd asked it earlier. How do you build up the three-sided market that's going on here? How do you get organizations to have wallets? How do you get the registry to start issuing so that companies want to have wallets? And how do you get verifiers wanting to use them? I know that's a way too complicated question, so I'll just ask it and leave it hanging out there, and maybe we can have you back to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
Very good and very huge question. What we are trying to do is that we are using the technology in a first step without the mobile wallet, so that we communicate directly in between the issuer and the verifier in a background checkup scenario, so that we get the issuer enabled and the verifier enabled. And the next step, then we will go the full flow through the holders, so that means through the enterprises, and then rolling out this one. And at least in Europe, it is helpful that we have this EU business wallet or EUDI wallet requested from the European Commission, which hopefully will get the drive really to roll out the EU business wallets.
Thank you, everybody. That's the Wallet Interop SIG for today, and we appreciate everybody joining us. I'm going to end the meeting.